Thanks everyone for the lovely dedications and um, just a reminder that we'll be here um, whatever whatever next Tuesday holds. We'll be here next Wednesday to meditate together. So it could be a nice space to be in after the election. And let's all work really hard between now and then, whatever we can do internally and externally. Um, I wanted to just put into the chat again, um, for those who are interested. I'm just sharing this the last couple of weeks because it's a late addition for our CCM classes, the Mussar Torah study, um, with myself and six other guests, will take turns teaching. It's just a half an hour on a Mussar read of the weekly Torah portion. And so just spreading the word about that. Register if you're interested. And then I'm also putting in this is the class that I'm teaching that starts tomorrow evening. And I know some of you are registered for that already, but I'm actually going to bring a teaching this morning from Rabbi Kalman Shapira, for our meditation. And that's going to be a 4-session class, but I'll give you a taste of him in our sit this morning. He was the Rebbe of the Warsaw Ghetto, and deep teacher. Really, one of the places where Hasidic thought meets Mussar. A Hasidic leader and teacher who taught Mussar before the war, and then we'll be in the class. We'll be studying part of his Mussar teachings from the 20s and 30s, and then we'll also be studying some of what he was writing and speaking about during the war. Like we'll get to study some sermons from 42 and 41 and 42 from the midst of it all. So very powerful and gifted teacher. And so I want to, kind of offer a piece of Torah of his. It's a teaching that he gives about the Baal Shem Tov. And I think in some way too, it connects to getting ready for the election in its own way, when the world seems really intense and we're white knuckling it through, this season. It can feel like that sometimes. So a way of kind of looking into the world and maybe something that can help us with that. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to bring it this morning. So the Baal Shem Tov teaches that when you look at the world, then God looks back at you. You're looking at God, and God is looking at you. We hear those words, Rabbi Shapira says, and we would say, well, we're not capable of such sight. We're not capable of that kind of sight. We look at the world and we see division, right? We see chaos. We see the tohu vavohu that Genesis talked about. We see a bunch of separate forms that are kind of dizzying and threatening sometimes. And so we don't understand what that means. What does that mean to look into the world and we see God and God sees us? So Rabbi Shapiro will say, well, that teaching of the Baal Shem Tovs doesn't mean, he's not talking about with the intellect, the kind of seeing that we do from the intellect. The intellect is good. It helps us with understandings that deepen our experience of the world and one another and help us to be in relationship to um, in skillful ways to living in the world. But clearly, the kind of vision that the Baal Shem Tov is talking about is a higher kind of vision, right? Rabbi Shapiro will say, for most of us, we go through life and we just see shadows and colors, just sort of forms, and we don't see the essence that sort of connects all of those forms. And sometimes we despair of really ever seeing that essence at all, or even if we do glimpse it in moments, like really living into that essence or really practicing our capacity to see that way in a more regular sense, we doubt our ability to do that. We say maybe the masters of old had such a capacity, but we find it impossible. And the Baal Shem Tov brings a teaching that says in the name, one of the names of God is not El Ha'olam, God of the world, but rather it's El Olam, without the definite article, because the world is not separate from God. It just means God world, right? So unlike other traditions that would say this world is a place of sin, this world is a place of that where we have to overcome our like the materiality. It's something that we have to sort of escape from to get to a higher world. Judaism really teaches, and the Hasidic tradition is really good at reminding us of this, that yes, we get distracted by the coarseness of the materiality and we forget the essence that is behind it. We forget the energy that is behind it. We don't see correctly in the deepest sense a lot of the time. But this world it's El Olam. This world is not different from God. That God, and in the traditional language, God causes a divine illumination to be concentrated into this world. And then Rabbi Shapira asks, so why is it that we see only the colors and the shadows, the outer garments, and the core of it remains unseen? And I think this is really we could say this is what has preoccupied all of the spiritual traditions. It's another way of saying, like, what is this suffering? What is it that we keep getting tripped up on? Is this the design of things, so to speak? And what Rabbi Shapira says, not necessarily in so many words, is, this is why we practice Mussar. And maybe the best way to practice that kind of seeing, to look into the world and see God looking back at us, and and that what we began with is to look at our fellow human being and to have a sense that, as it says with Jacob and Esau, seeing your face is like seeing the face of God. That there's a way in our interpersonal relationships that will teach us about this kind of seeing, that it begins on the human level and expands beyond the human level, but that's our goal. And we always have this tension in Mussar because we're trained through our Levinasian thought, right? And to see the other as separate and unique and mysterious, to not try to appropriate the other, merge with the other, to serve them in their separateness. So we have that, and that's sort of a committed practice. But there's a creative tension with seeing the other and seeing this world of shadows and forms just in general, and knowing that the deepest essence is that the other is not other, right? And that's the tension that we have in our Mussar work, and just in our lives. So I've been practicing with it this week, and it's kind of as we get to the home stretch of this election, right? Like this, where the polarization just seems deeper and deeper, right? And just more, and I think from that sense of polarization, more and more despair, often comes. And it can be hard to see the other person. It's easy to see the other person as separate, but it's hard to say from that place of separateness, I have to learn to be of service. Or it's hard to say it's a perceived separateness, but I know deeply that we're cut from the same cloth. I know deeply that God is looking back at me through their eyes. So I'll leave us with this as we from Rabbi Shapira. He says we're put on earth to remind each other, or to awaken that part of us. And you could put it this way: to awaken that part of us that knows how to look into the world and see God, and to see God looking back at us. We're put into the world to awaken that birthright, in a way, that we have of that kind of seeing, that we're created with that, and we're here to remind each other of that, to awaken that in each other. And he says, when we're able to do that in another person's presence, it's like we're waking up from a dream, and we understand, but we're awake. It's like waking up from a dream, but we're already awake. But it's waking up into a deeper knowing, and that's what we're here to help each other with, and to let others help us with. When we're in the presence of a teaching that, from like knowledge from outside that vibrates or resonates with our internal knowledge. And so as we go into our meditation, Stan was saying this last night at the Mussar Torah study session. Equanimity is a good midah to sit with, as we get ready for this last push of towards election day. Menuchat hanefesh, that we know will be more effective if there's a calm, that we're able to touch. Nechuta is another good midah to work with calmness, right? And those are two sides of the same coin, kind of external calmness, internal calmness. And in a way, far from being a navel gazing proposition, I think to access that calmness as we go into this week, with the interactions that lie before us, actually, it feels very important. I think we'll be able to be of greater service if we have access to that equanimity or calmness. So we can sit towards that midah, we can allow the breath. Sometimes when we are in those places of white knuckling it, right, we forget to breathe. I had an experience at Paloma's bat mitzvah that was this past Shabbat, where I felt such a sense of exhalation. And I almost realized maybe 3/5 of the time in my life, I'm inhaling, and 2/5 I'm exhaling. Like, you know what I mean? I just was breathing, but I wasn't, and so when we sit, we remember also to do the fuller exhale, right? So you can get in touch with the breath. You don't have to make the breath do anything, but you can witness the breath and feel the breath and just allow the breath, and not kind of put stumbling blocks before it. Let the exhalation be a little longer. Just allow it to be a little longer. I think when we are practicing equanimity or calmness, there's also a sense that it brings us, God willing, to a sense of trust. And maybe the trust is based in what Rabbi Shapiro was teaching, that there is a deeper essence that breaks through all of the separate forms and connects all of us. And somehow we can rest into that knowing, even if sometimes it feels like a fleeting knowing. When we have that calm, when we're in touch with our breath and the breath in the body, it's easier to touch that trust. So let's sit. So may we find calmness today, in this next week. May we be the calm today and in this next week and going forward. May our seeing help us to look into this world and see God. May any insight or realization or harvest from this time sitting together this morning, may it be for the benefit of all beings everywhere. May all beings be blessed. Thank you, everybody. And if I misspoke, I think the class begins this evening. So in case I said that wrong. And see you, if not before then, so hope to see you next Wednesday morning.